Reading in the 14th season of the Friends of the Scranton Public Library Poetry Series. We are funded by grants from the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts and also the Lackawanna County Commissioners Arts to the People program, as well as some other contributors. And I'd like to just briefly tell you what else we have planned for this year. There will be another reading, not too distant future, November 7th, a poet by the name of W.D. Earhart from the Philadelphia area. And then next spring, April 7th, a poet named David Ray, who currently teaches at University of Missouri, Kansas City, will be coming here. Some other local poetry events I'd like to announce, too. The Mulberry Poets and Writers Association is going to be sponsoring a reading this coming Friday, not tomorrow, October 12th, an open reading featuring Craig Chury. It's at St. Stephen's Church, 35 South Franklin in Wilkes-Barre, and there will also be a nationally known mime there named Joel Gorey. That's at 8 o'clock on Friday, October 12th. And then on Sunday, November 4th, there's going to be a poetry workshop sponsored by MIPWA, as it is sometimes referred to, with Karen Blomain being the person leading the workshop. Anyone who wants to participate in that must submit 2 poems postmarked by October 19th. Then by October 26th, you will be told if you've been selected, and those people who are selected will be charged a $15 participation fee. That's here in the Lucan Center. At 2 o'clock, ultimately, is when the workshop is. And then that evening at 6:30 will be an open reading featuring Karen Blomain. There are many other readings planned later in the year by Mulberry Poets. Another thing that is planned by the Mulberry Poets coming up relatively soon, this year they have started a poetry discussion group, which I'm leading, and it's for people who would like to talk with other people who are interested in poetry about poetry, non-threatening. There are no papers, no tests, just talking about poems. We've already had one. The next one is October 15th, that Monday, at 7 o'clock here in the Lucan Center. And speaking of our series, if you are not on our mailing list, please sign your name. There's a sheet at the table back there where we'll have the refreshments during the reception following the reading. Tonight, we're very pleased to have Collette Inez reading, author of 4 books of poetry, at least. Most recently, Family Life, which will be on sale after the reading. She is taught at the New School in New York City and at NYU. She is presently teaching, just on a temporary visiting basis, at Ohio University, where she has just returned to the East for this reading. Her poetry has received many, many honors, including the Pushcart Prize, Rockefeller Foundation, Fellowship, NEA Fellowships. And usually when I introduce poets, I stay clear of blurbs, on the back of books. But there were a couple that just caught my eye, just to give you a brief sense of 2 book reviewers' impressions of her poetry. Described it in the New York Times. A man named Thomas Last described it as innovative, varied, sharp-edged. And another reviewer said, here are poems of biography, but also of women, of love, of the adult world, real and imaginary. They prove that poetry is a defense against the famine of everyday life. So at this point, I'm very pleased to be able to present to you Collette Inez.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I thank the Friends of Scranton Library for making it possible. I want to start out with my first poem as a tribute to another poet, perhaps to one of my betters. And this is a poem for William Stafford, who stood behind a podium just like this and said, you can write poems about anything. You can write poems about crazy things in your family life. And I thought about that, and I thought perhaps I would jot down some things about my husband's family life. And then I decided that perhaps I could allow myself to intrude. And this is a poem called going far, and everything in it is true. Going far. My mother-in-law's dog ate stones. After he died, my father-in-law left 12 soap dishes and a sliver of soap. When my husband was a boy, alone and sinking in a lake, a counselor happened by and towed him to shore. I almost drowned 4 times from going out too far. I didn't want to die. I wanted to be recognized. Seaweed in my hair, purple lips, sand in my nostrils for what I was, a bad swimmer, a failed goddess. In class, Mrs. Cole washed Richard Ryan's mouth with soap for saying "God damn." Once I swallowed stones on a dare. It was heavy going to ride the waves, but I went far, and I am here, rescued from the past. God damn. My next poem is inspired by graffiti and an interesting sign on a New York subway system that said, "Orphans of all denominations will meet in Central Park." And since I had been an orphan or a quasi-orphan of Catholic denomination, I was very charged to write this poem. Orphans of all denominations will meet in Tierra del Fuego orphanage grounds near the sign that says, "Do not smoke the orphans. Do not step on the orphans. They've been burned enough in the sizzling lake that shines like the smile of Razzlebath, the sleuth man." Orphans of all denominations will meet in Heidelberg near the Autobahn sign that says, "Achtung, do not pick the orphans from out of the grass where they memorize lice on the pillows." Buddhist, Shinto, Baha'i, Seventh-day Animist orphans will meet in Mali near the airport sign that says, "Check all orphans with the baggage man and buckle them in to dream of passage like doomed geese, stunned with corn and gorge for the feast of organs." Orphans of all remunerations, 50-cent orphans, living wage orphans, minus the price of abortion orphans, will meet in Valdosta near the sign that says, "Put an orphan in your tank and see the longer miles he smiles in the speed of forgetting orphanage picnics the empire packs in throwaway time." Be nice to the orphans. They want to suffer ship-shaped lives in our ribald state, which is dying in all denominations, near the sign that says, "No disrobing orphans on the beach. Offenses will be met on orphanage grounds, disposable minds and redeemable whips, free to the keeper of orphans." I have another orphan poem, but this one is a poem which was taken from an article I read in the New York Times some years ago, which talked about the orphans of Tangshan. And these were children who were found in the rubble of a great earthquake in 1976. And they were so young that they didn't know their names. They didn't know their family names. This is a poem called "The Orphans of Tangshan." The thunder has no mother. Who is the father of the wind? In the sky, the mother of the 7 stars gives honey to the bear. The orphanage children begin to speak. A boy mumbles, "Earth has swallowed his name," and points to the ground. "Ghost sister," a girl shouts in her sleep. "The land ate my house," she says when she wakes. After the earthquake, they are given new names. Who are your parents, visitors ask, and do you love the party and the state? Our teachers, they reply, and yes, yes. Calendars are hung and curled into scrolls, quilts open and fold. Each day bowls fill up with rice, white as the paper that holds brushed words. Years crumble and fall down, the children get up and grow tall, yet many keep stumbling inside the same dream. A red sun spills them into dawn when the city of Tangshan eases out of sleep, and across the northern valley, mothers call, "Moon willow, monkey, time to wake." Now I'm going to share with you a little bit of my unconventional biography, which is very important to my poetry. I don't make things up. This is a poem from my father, who was a biological father who was also a professional father, a Roman Catholic priest. And in this poem, I long for him to be a normal father, a real father. And it's called My Father in a Garden. In a photo of a garden at the century's turn, you stand in front of Our Lady of Sorrow, a heavy-footed bulldog of a man, your head humming with orisons and Latin verbs, and next to you hydrangeas bend the boughs of the shrub, blue as Mary's robe, as the dust your cassock has become in a garden of stone where the sea anoints the coast. Bridegroom of Christ, writer of tracts, my mother's lover, you never called me daughter. I never called you father. And after decades of Hail Mary, ending in Gloria, I come to this western garden not to look at flowers, but to ask, what am I to make of these facts of you? You who will never trace my eyebrows or my mouth. They have blown away these ardors of another life when you were young, your body stout in its priestly dark, but not my words scattered on your grave or the moment I invent. You snap off your collar and turn, an ordinary father, to embrace me in the garden. And I have one more poem for him in which I use the imagery of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where the departed are placed in ships which carry their souls. It's a poem of longing. My father sails in the west, dwelling place of departed souls. Ghost priest, now moored to a solar bark, chanting spells to get back your name, the memory of a gliding life. Before you were called by the judge of the dead, did you sing here on the water in the fulfilling long light that comes before dusk? My seminarian, the abbots praised your summer conduct at St. Mary's on the sea, what zest you brought to loving God. Did you sing the 7 joys of Mary, of the devil's 9 questions when you pulled on the oars? Sailor, where the dead ride at anchor and have no shore, my father, these many years later I carry your face to reflect on the water. Do you hear my song? It will follow your wake. Save me a place at the prow of the bark. When I lived with the Catholic sisters in Belgium in a Catholic home for children, we were not allowed to have toys because the sisters feared that we would quarrel and there would be unequal worlds. So this poem talks about the world of imagination that rose up from that lack, and is called Without Toys at the Home. No dolls, nuns thought we would quarrel. No spinning tops, tin what-have-yous, wind-ups, anything which might distract offsprings of the solemn church. Nuns meant well, as did their priests, mumbling over games of chess. At the home, I gave my fingernails names and jobs. Old Thumb Pierre the Cop, Pinky Francine, slim-hipped one-note pianist. In my palms, I loved the roads that led me to my realms. Lantasa, high in the reaches of tea. Whoa and neigh, crofts from my shires, stallions and nags. The rocking horse I wanted lived in a yellow book where a boy arranged trains on the floor. His sister held a china doll with lamb's wool yellow hair. I let my playstone sleep in the doll's chiffonier in a velvet-lined drawer. At the home, our beds used to float like yachts in the waves of our sleep. My sheet was a sail, the pillow a horse. I rode calling to my second finger, Dulce, stay away, nuns will find us in my cloud. A cloud won't stay put, more than once I've been found out, my cheeks still smart from being caught. Spring clouds, war clouds, summer thunder, lulls and calms. Behind the gate of the home, the children have fallen in a mumble of years, and their children have toys enough to break, and their children enough for quarreling. I think we have a little change of pace now. This is a poem which came actually from reading a book of Proverbs, but not the book of Proverbs, but one that had a whole series of maxims. And the one that pleased me enough to start a poem was this: women, priests, and poultry have never enough. Women, priests, and poultry have never enough. Women want to shun the coop, shoo the chickens off the farm. Chickens can't tell a woman from a man. All men are clucks to them. Every Sunday the priest eats fowl. He likes a fallen woman now and again, the cackles of her laughter. Enough, enough, the rooster never has enough crowing. Women never have enough to show for all their running to market and church. Priests keep wanting to kiss the ring of a pope who eats in the Vatican, blessing his brood. Life is one egg after another, a scramble of souls to say confession to the priest. There are women who never have enough forgiveness of sins, poor birds all. At readings, I often like to offer a poem that I've never spoken before. And this is one which was written because I heard Sharon Olds on TV. I don't know if any of you saw her. It was a wonderful program. She was reading with Galway Kinnell, and she was encouraging her audience to write poems using a few adjectives and so many adverbs and so many nouns, and to write about hands. So I decided I would try a poem on hands. And as I wrote the poem, I found myself reaching out for my reluctant mother and writing about her hands. Hands. In a dream, I watched the postman's knobby hands bearing my letter, afraid someone might suspect something out of the way. You tore it in two, you flung it in the river. Full of longing, my words, like my hands, kept their distance from your fear. Yet, old woman who never said my name, I say if I could drop down beside you, I would cover your hands in mine. I would pull out the combs to let your hair fall like a cloak, all in a rush. I would touch your lashes with my fingertips, not in the house of your dry-eyed gaze, not in the room of your pinched lips, marking out words, so many for your river's history, the local ruins I might note in my wanderings. but above the small door you form with your hands. You who once took my hand lightly in yours, but let it slip away. You reading the hours in shadows on the lawn, the sweep hand of your watch will not have run its term when your eyes curl back. Then my fingers would flutter like birds carrying strands of your hair to twine in their nests. And this is a longer poem from my mother, and it's a one in which I imagine her as a woman in a book of hours, one of those medieval women, very pure, framed, and in the light. It's a poem called Mart's Almanac, and it was really begun at my last visit to my mother, who lives in the south of France and has gone back to the house in which she was born. And she's a very cool intellectual perfectionist who has not acknowledged me as her daughter. But I acknowledge her in my poems. This is called Mart's Almanac for my mother. Propped in bed through years of secret ills, Marthe reads histories of Jeanne d'Albret, daughter of Marguerite de Navarre, La Reine Margot, her court life memoirs of Gascony. Zone time, apparent time, civil time, it is wind through sand, it is lamp black soot from the chimney flue. She broods, riffling through chronicles of what has run its course along the river and past her house, and though that woman, my mother, may stare at the courtyard below, she will not see women breaking flax for linen, selling bread and silver, spinning, carding, weaving, hoisting sacks of wheat to the mill, shelling peas, feeding geese. None will draw vinegar and water from a keg, shovel ashes, churn butter, brew ale, nor stew small birds in iron kettles. Marthe gazes out the window in August, September harvest, and each stroke of the hour falls on her skin, on the slender watch circling her wrist. What time is it? Sometimes she forgets what her serving girl says. I am not there to hold a cup of water to her lips, to comb her white hair. Illuminated gold from the sun writes elaborate initials on the water, and autumn clouds ride over the bridge. I almost see her framed in a book of hours. She is the woman skilled in calligraphy. Winter scrolls gray light into a room that holds her half asleep as she lets a book fall to the floor, loses count of the page. I'm going to change a pace now and take you from my mother and father to my first foster family in Long Island, and it was quite a jolt. I was sort of a misaddressed package and was delivered to a foster family in which the father was a seller of silks from Chicago, and his name was Ray, her name was Ruth. And this poem for Ray, I sort of let him syncopate down the page and show you how he loved his Latin dances. Ray, the seller of silks from Chicago, did the mambo, the foxtrot, the rumba, the samba, the conga. Narrow feet in silk blend socks, two-tone shoes, slim in flannel slacks, tapered shirts, all of him sashayed and twirled. He didn't miss a step, a smooth man, confident, except when his hands danced the hangover shake, and he blinked back dreams of tapping spiders with jittery legs dangling from a web. Ray, the seller of silks, a bolt of crepe de chine, madame, he said, as he winked with a sweep of his hand to conjure up grand distances where women lounged on ottomans and a man had only to point. Ray from Chicago. And he loved a well-turned ankle, seamed hose, women who floated on clouds of perfume. After closing the sale, he smoothed his hair in the mirror and hummed, except when his mouth burned for a shot of rye, bourbon neat, whiskey straight, the blackout cocktails of oblivion, he had bursitis nervosa, an inflamed need for one down the hatch, another for the road, a little pick-me-up, and on, bad nerves. Ray, the seller of shantung, pongee, pot de soie, the best for the best, he told his customers, opening the sample book. The bosses agreed that Ray was number one, born for the job. Yes, he liked to drink. No sour-faced teetotaler, not Ray. But when he mixed bicarb and raw eggs, lemon and cayenne to swig in one gulp at 7 a.m., Ray did the tremble step the morning after shuffle. In a pure silk robe, toting up the sails, he began to forget stops to make, calls to return. Ray, a blurred man, slurring his words, missing the beat, headed for the drying out tank jamboree, the nightmare delirium hop. Always makes me thirsty, that poem. I have pure water. It says that. This is a little bit more of a chronicle. This is 6 months after my first foster mother, Ruth, died. Ray meets and marries a sadistic ex-beauty queen, and I slide down into more alcoholic mayhem. This is a poem written sort of in a ballad style, and it's called Windpipe and Life Go On Song. Foster mother Dee gripped my windpipe with her thumbs. Fear dried out my mouth. Grandma called police. Dee stopped to down another shot of rum. I touched a blue path around my neck and spun into fog. That night, the police knocked on the door of my dream. When I sawed off Dee's head, they hooked their thumbs into Sam Brown belts. In the blue days of getting back my voice, what did Grandma say while I moped with my head in my hands? Don't sit there like a leech. And life went on and on like a long-winded speech. Dee fattened and drooped, broke off, made up with Ray, her second shot at married life, his third. Grandma's son, I saw Ray's thing like a billy club sticking out of his pants. He'd give me a spit-filled kiss I'd wipe away with the back of my hand. In the gray days of choking the fire to dig out my books burned in a drunken binge, the great Homer tapped on the door of my dream. Go build a raft for the lattermost isles, he counseled me. Before Ray took off and Grandma had a fall and I bought a blue dress for her burial. In the green days of leaving Dee to toss off whiskeys in a sour house, I embarked for another town to look for a well-stocked bar on a banker's yacht I didn't find, and life went on and on, it went on. Now we have a sharp transition and a quote from Plato, who said that the moving image, time is the moving image of eternity. And in this particular poem, I try to speak of days from a more mundane humanist point of view. It's called, What Are the Days? What are the days? They are pilferers, stealing our resolve, Thomas broods aloud. Or stones to use for good or ill, says James, sitting on a rock with Peter. Soon the dreamer comes along saying, all days are brothers. Aren't days fish swimming to shore? Asks Simon the fisherman, mending his nets. They are coins to hoard or to spend. Judas frowns and looks at his palms. Twaddle, says Martha, running to fix supper. You talkers, get me a hen, get me an egg. I bet you think all the days are women pouring wine and honey. They are what they are, says the hammerer of nails, securing thieves and the dreamer to the cross, nothing more. I have a love poem now, a change. They said, a love poem actually for my husband, and husbands don't come off well in poetry, so this is true. So this is a poem which was written for Saul, who's in the audience, and it was one in which we were kind of kicking up sand in West Florida, and there was a time of the afternoon when the shadows are very long, and I asked him about the nature of shadows. It's a tender poem, I'll read it. The day we made long shadows. I thought I knew what I needed to come through the winter. You, not suffering. I'd learned that early on in shadowy aisles of the church, in childhood's noisy corridors. Looking at our shadows, they pull darkness out of light, you said, as we scuffed up sand in a late afternoon of palms and gulls. I knew our bodies defined them, that they were ourselves, obscure and pursued in a tyranny of givens. I also wanted what you knew. Explain them, I asked, and you drew a circle of sun with angles to it in the sand. Later, we spotted the shadow of a pelican dipping its beak at the sea's farthest edge. This is a poem in the form of a letter, and it's one in which I address women friends. And they're sort of an amalgam of women friends, photographers, poets. It's called Red August Letter. You'll notice in the poem I play with a lot of little red colors, little dots of reds. The day you bought me geraniums, my period came. That night I had a red dream, red walls, lamps. You were a photographer in a dark room developing shots I couldn't quite make out. I asked how you balanced opposing needs. You shrugged and lifted pictures out of a chemical bath. In the photo you left of the party, who is the feral-looking poet in the rumpled suit? Woman-hater, once I would have memorized his poems. The rain goes on. I've read your note, its chaste, familiar script on a monogrammed blue page. I write, my paper laps up ink, stamps curl, a vague taste of stickum lingers in my mouth. Slack hours. Do you ever imagine the atoms of your watch pulsing in a fading light? Take a stand, intones my clock from its orderly frontier. I resolve to reconcile odds and ends, to inspect, put things out of sight, receive the house god, give him loose-skinned oranges, an offering for auspicious news. Was it last spring, after we'd found the cardinal's nest fastened to a branch of pine, we spoke of ways to stave off birth? What I didn't say was that my scrap of a child sometimes floats in the back of my head like a sea creature, open-mouthed, as if it were startled or in pain to learn its name would not be called. Tonight, Mars and Venus are aligned in the summer sky. Come with your prints and films. All week opulent sunsets have fallen on soaked roads. Forecasters say nothing we haven't heard. I want to hear your reflector dream, your daughter dream, to be brought into communion with old ghosts. The poem I'm going to read to you now actually was written in the back of a bus, and I was coming into Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. So I thought, and I was looking at cloud shapes and feeling very inspired. I think I was leaving Scranton from a reading. And I was on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and all these kind of images came. And the poem is called Spring Clouds, Leaving Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Goat gray, horn white, blur, blur, winter's over. Yellow green, new again, a boy turns 18. probes the knobs of horns budding in his skull. In the dark, he smells roots crushed underfoot after rain. In dreams of towers and pyramids, he's a lord. Circling his lady's blue frame house, he snorts and roars, rattles his spear in the air, revs his car, hears the ancient song of rain on bark, wind in the pines. When the girl speeds towards him on her bicycle, he will marry her. When she blinks in the honeyed light of dusk, a six-pack in her lap, he will marry her. When clouds spring over the Pennsylvania mountains, Appalachian, Pocono, over rivers Lackawanna, Delaware, they will be married and turn year by year to bodies of contention, flinging accusations to the hungry dark, their shadows sprouting horns and cloven hooves among stick-tights, hawkweed, adder's tongue. This poem says nothing about my married life, really. It's all imaginary. This is a prose poem which has a series of counsels given to me by my foster grandmother, who was a repository of sexual ignorance. And so I don't know, we all store such kinds of it. This is a little prose poem in two parts called How It Was Advised by an Elderly Woman to Restrain my Essential Heat. 1, engrave a no in sharp blue ink on the palm of your hand. This is for daylight longings. The no will drift into your veins, gathering fat. Finally, in its swollen state, a great blubbering negative, it will squat in your brain where it pumps no, blue no. You will sit alone with your paralyzed palm. 2, dip your wrist under a tap of icy water until the skin turns purple and hurts. This is for nighttime longings. Your wrists will freeze into heavy chain, hearing the hiccups of the clock. Sometimes you will be entirely restrained, sitting alone, your electric chair wired for its job, but the main fuse blown somewhere out of town. This is a poem about food, and it's particularly about the kind of food I used to have in the Midwest, where everything sort of was white on white plates. And it's a poem called Midwest Albas. Sort of a love poem in a way. In heartland cafeterias, I hear the resolute chirp of women heaping pale food on white platters. Tuna surprise, baby corn niblets, flash frozen cod, potatoes whipped, ridged, stuffed, mashed, washed down with peach cobblers, coconut pie, sighing under vanilla ice cream in a scoop, and loaves, wafers, snaps, strips, squares, puffs, crullers, cakes, guests at the wedding of lemon and meringue, at the marriage of brown and serve, humming in the company of veal, sole in foil baked by Midwestern women, offering consolations of buttermilk biscuits, the solace of fritters throughout the breadbasket states of the land, rendered helpless in a rain of salt, in a meltdown of cream. This is a New York love poem, too. This is a poem for a woman named Nilda, who actually had a little sign in a beauty parlor that said, "Good news, Nilda is back." And I think that it's a mark of a writer that you don't want to let that go. You want to know where Nilda's been. There's a little story there, you know. Where did she go? Why is it good news that she's back? And so on. This is an old poem, but one that I feel close to. Good news, Nilda is back, the sign huzzahs in the beauty shop, as the rain combs the sky over and over like a grandmother combing the hair of a child. impermanent waves of rain on the street. The trees are straight, but the city bends. Nilda is back from Guayaquil, Quito, Ponce, San Jose, to tease the gringo smiles of blue-eyed wives in the reigning city. And now she cha-chas up the aisles to supervise the upswept lines of an aging lady who does not know why Nilda comes or why she goes or where her hair uncurls at night, damp at the edge from waves of love. This is a poem addressed to discriminators, but not really the ones you might think of, not the most commonplace kind, but the kind that discriminate on account of your lack of height or your lack of width. These are I call sizists or shapists. And this poem is a series of little counsels on how to address such discriminators, called apothegms and counsels. If someone says you're too short, say, diamond pins don't come in cartons. If someone says you're too large, say, you're an Amazon at large. If someone says your breasts are too big, say, you bought them in Kathmandu and the fitting rooms were dark. Say, chickpeas are loved in Prague if someone says your breasts are too small. How much do you weigh on the sun, on the moon? Tons on the sun, less on the moon. Love makes you weightless. If someone says you're too far out, say Doppler effect, that you're writing a history of light for the children of Pythagoras. And I have a little calendar here, and one more poem. This is a calendar which I'm proud to say was carried on 2,200 New York state buses in one of those programs of bringing poetry to the community. And it's a play with the months of the year and also with that little ditty, Monday's Child. No, 30 days, not Monday's Child, but 30 days, half, etc. It's called Maya Calendar. Monks of the years for zodiacal ears. Actuary, fritillary, mush, mandrill, mace, jejune, jelly, aghast, septic ember, oak toner, remember, distemper. Device to mesmerize the monks. 30 days hath septic ember, mandrill, jejune, and remember, all the rest have 31 dyes of different color. Actuary, puce, mush, buff, mace, rose, jelly, lime, aghast, jade, oak toner, rust, distemper, slush, except fritillary, which howls 28 cold tones of dust. And for this, the last poem I'm going to read to you was prompted or inspired really by the name of a butterfly. And the name was the Great Spangled Fritillary. And then when I found out that this beautifully named butterfly sups on violets at dusk, I knew I had to have it in a poem. So I've mixed in a little bit of literary allusions, and the poem is called Musing on Large Questions in a Small Corner of England. Early evening, firethorns, trillium, in hedges, goldfinch twitter, and Blake in Felpham dining naked as Adam. I wonder, when did he see druids gather in his garden? The world's queries spin in books, in moats above podiums, gold in a hazy light. Shelley breaking sponge cake into hot rum and tea. Why did he refute logical proof of the notion of God? Forgiving the plow, Blake's cutworms do their work, and archangels sing in the field. Is there no magic spell to master death when it breaks loose? the past curls away, but supping on violets, the great spangled fritillary can't deny anyone's reason for song, and lights one flower at a time in the meadow like a flame. Thank you very much.
Where exactly was the small part of England that poem was written? That final poem?
The one about butterflies,
The last poem about the small part of England using large.
that poem was, I have to answer, that was written in a very small corner of my Manhattan apartment.
Oh.
But that's the wonderful thing about your imagination can leap across countries, and I really felt it was in England when I was writing it. I felt very English. I even used English flowers. I had a hedgerow feeling about it when I was writing it. But it wouldn't sound right. You see, a small corner of Manhattan has absolutely no nosh. There's a few more questions. Yes. Oh, well, I like to play with language, and I take playing seriously. And I think we all get sick. Don't you all get sick Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? You want to do monsoon, two-way, woodley, or something. I think it's that urge to play, which was in my childhood perhaps more repressed than average. But even so, I know people with entirely fulfilled childhoods who still want to play with language. So it came from that impulse. And doodling on paper, saying doodling, make up names, and I know it's just a good time to get poetry to celebrate, have joy, take joy in life. Another few questions? Just want to get you involved so you have to sort of there. Yes, and I saw a little twitch. Twitch somebody? Yes. Can you give me a definition? A definition. Oh my goodness. That's a very, I give you a definition. For me, I would just say someone who loves song, and someone who loves music and who loves language. But for me, I think the first I would say someone in love with cadence and music. One more, yes?
That poem when you were on the bus or when you were from Scranton,
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand it, but you think you were talking about
Well, what I was doing was actually that the poem was, we began reading in airiness. I was on the bus, I was sort of feeling excited, and I was ready for a poem, I was sort of agitated, and I saw cloud shapes. And then I started writing down on my little pad about the cloud shapes, and then I began to get a romantic story of a couple meeting, and I used the names of the mountains. It was all made up with that wonderful, to use your imagination. I took off from that, but using the cloud shape as my opening, that was all. Maybe just one more, and then yes, you can talk to me about I think we're going to have one keep that. Yes, I thought you had a hand, no?
Well, maybe in a more informal way.
Yeah, maybe in an informal way.
Please stick around for some refreshments. And thank